Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello, my name is Dan, and today we are going to be talking about Mega Man Zero on the Game Boy Advance. But before I get started, I'm going to introduce myself just a little bit. I grew up playing video games and I have a ton of energy when it comes to talking about them, and I use that energy to make YouTube videos about them. I like to talk about games that I think deserve a second look. Maybe they didn't review so good, but have some good things about them. I like to make lists of games that I don't want you to miss out on, lists of games that have a certain theme to them. And I also like to talk about gaming hardware and handheld consoles that I enjoy a lot. But if you want to see anything that I make, it's on YouTube at youtube.com/Danomak. That's Danomak. So with all of that said, let's get started and talk about one of the best games on the Game Boy Advance. Before we could talk about Mega Man Zero and how it made its way into my life, we should go over how Mega Man X played a role in my life as well. I never owned a Super Nintendo, so as a result, I was only able to play Mega Man X at my friends' houses. Of course, down the line, I eventually emulated the game, but until then, I really didn't have a lot of exposure to Mega Man X. And while I didn't have a Super Nintendo, I did have a Game Boy Advance, and lucky for me, Mega Man Zero was a love letter to anybody who liked Mega Man X as well as the character Zero from that series. There was Mega Man Extreme on the Game Boy Color, but it just wasn't the same as Mega Man X. So having something to play that played like Mega Man X but was also a lot different and stood out on its own was really exciting to me at the time. I also remember thinking, why aren't more people talking about Mega Man Zero? This game is great. It's Mega Man X and then a sequel to that. And people love Mega Man X, so what gives? Whatever the case may be for that, I'm happy to talk about this game with you today. So for lots of fans of Mega Man X, Zero was kind of the best part of the series. He was so different. He had flowing blonde hair. They eventually gave Zero a lightsaber. I mean, why wouldn't you want to play as Zero? And when you first meet Zero, X is being held by a character named Vile, and it seems like X is about to die, but the music goes quiet. And suddenly you hear a charge of a beam, and then Zero fires this blast and dashes onto the screen, and then again starts charging his buster. Vile pieces out because he knows he's about to get rocked. All the time while this is happening, Zero's theme is playing, which is this ridiculously cool guitar solo thing. It's an unforgettable moment. It just shows you how powerful Zero is, and hopefully how powerful X will become. All that being said, I can guarantee you that most people looked at Zero and said, wait, why am I playing as Mega Man? I want to play as that character. And Mega Man Zero lets you play as that character. But let's talk about exactly the moment where Mega Man Zero addresses Mega Man X immediately and perfectly. When you start Mega Man Zero, you're presented with a group of what look like resistance fighters who are not doing well. And there's this one character, Seal, who is at the head of the group, and they're apparently on some mission. You see Zero hunched over, dead, has no arms, does have flowing blonde hair, but is not alive. Seal sends what looks like a magical looking elf at Zero, and suddenly he's revived, fully alive, breathing, hair intact, but doesn't know who he is yet. However, when this happens, they once again play that great guitar-based song that we heard in Mega Man X. They instantly bring you back to that moment where you said, who is Zero? I want to play as Zero. Well, now you are playing as Zero, and this sets the stage for the entire game. So let's immediately talk about the art in Mega Man Zero, because it's probably the biggest difference that you'll notice right out of the gate. Everything looks a little more anime, a little more dramatic. There's a lot more detail. This has a lot to do with the way the Game Boy Advance looked, but also we're further down the line when it comes to how pixel art has progressed in general, and we're seeing a lot of that in Mega Man Zero. Zero himself looks a lot different than he does in Mega Man X. And while canonically he is the same character, he looks sort of like a merge between Mega Man and Zero as one character. And like I said, this isn't actually the case for the story. It is supposed to be the same character, Zero. It just looks different. They used this chance to have fun with the way the game looks, and Zero was basically redesigned for that reason. Now, speaking about my experience with Mega Man Zero specifically, I actually wound up playing Rockman Zero before I played Mega Man Zero on my GBA. I heard about this new Mega Man game coming out, and I did some Google searching at the time and found the ROM for it, and I knew that it was Mega Man, so I didn't really need to read anything. I just wanted to shoot my lemons at enemies. Anyway, one major difference between Mega Man Zero, which is the US version, and Rockman Zero, the Japanese version, is that Rockman Zero features blood in a game where you're killing robots. At first I thought this meant that Zero was killing people, but that's not the case. You kill a robot and they spurt blood like it's some ridiculous gory anime. And this took me way off guard, but it also helps set the stage that this is a seriously toned Mega Man game. They're taking this opportunity to tell a more mature story. Granted, it's still Mega Man, you're fighting robots, but you're really supposed to take all of this seriously. That being said, the blood spurts didn't make their way into the US version of the game, but if you wind up getting the Mega Man 0/ZX collection on Switch and modern consoles, you can switch to the Japanese version, and this is intact. It's a ridiculous feature, and it's kind of hilarious to me. Anyway, this serious tone persists not only through this game, but also Mega Man Zeroes 2, 3, and 4. But when we're talking about the story, that's also a big part of it. It's also very heavy when compared to other Mega Man games. Zero was revived by a resistance leader named Seal, like I mentioned earlier, and the game is all about fighting back against what is actually X's army of Reploid killers, and they're trying to bring peace to the world by killing Reploids. Not great. So each level of the game isn't focused on a boss per se, it's more so focused on the mission at hand, whether you're going to get data back from the enemy or you're going to stop one of their trains from shipping weapons. It's more about the resistance than it is about the bosses. And this is most evident in the fact that you're actually not presented with a boss select screen like you have been in previous Mega Man games. I thought this was a really cool way to hone in on the story because in Mega Man, yes, there's a story, and I'm not going to take that away from any of the Mega Man games, but you're more so focused on killing the bosses and you're trying to guess their weaknesses when you look at their profile photos in the game. But instead, you just go through levels and then you meet the boss at the end and they're there to stop you. Sometimes they're not even like a boss with dialogue. It's just part of the level that is the boss. And I thought this was a really cool way to focus on the story because this is one of the more narrative heavy Mega Man games outside of course, like the Mega Man RPG games. This one does a good job of actually sitting you down and saying, hey, the world's in trouble and here's why it's important that you're helping it. So now as the story progresses, you're given access to 2 more weapons. I stated earlier that you're Zero, so you do have that beam saber, you have a buster because this is a Mega Man game, but then you also get a shield which can be thrown and also used to deflect bullets back at enemies, and you get a lance, which is called the triple rod, I think, and that actually extends out to do extra long distance attacks. And these weapons can only be upgraded by using them constantly. So they're on a star system, and the more you use the Z-Saber, the more you get the ability to use combos with it. Now, I mean, the game starts you with just a single slash. It's very frustrating. Then you have to upgrade to a second slash, and then that's kind of better, and so on and so forth. It does give you a reason to use weapons in repetition. Granted, the saber is the most fun one, but the other ones have their advantages as well. On top of having to use weapons to upgrade them, you also have to get cyber elves. You have to feed them crystals, and then they mature, and then you equip them, and that is how you get better defense. That's how you get a bigger health bar, and that's also how you do more damage. And this isn't exactly ideal. A lot of players would be used to getting a health tank to get a bigger health bar, or finding an E-tank. Instead, you have to raise these little creatures and feed them collectibles you find throughout levels. It could be a little tedious, a little grindy, and that's acknowledged by the fact that this specific feature is made a little easier as the series goes on. One thing I really love about Mega Man Zero is that it makes a point of letting you know that it's the skill-based Mega Man game that maybe you wanted, maybe you didn't, but ultimately it is about how good you are at the game. And while you do have elements that you can equip as fire, ice, and lightning, not nearly as many as other Mega Man games, you're really more encouraged to focus on the boss's patterns and making sure you learn their patterns, because having their weakness equipped is not enough. It's going to be a great help, but learning their patterns is this game. This game is, I'm not going to say it's like the Dark Souls of Mega Man games, but if you want to talk about one of the more challenging Mega Man games, this one's, in my opinion, pretty high on the list. And they drive the point home that this is the skill-based Mega Man game by also giving you a letter grade as you play through the story. Every level ends with sort of an assessment of how you did, how much damage you took, how many enemies you defeated, how fast you beat it, what weapon you used, if you used any cyber elves, and so on and so forth. They give you penalties and points, and at the end you're given a grade, and this persists. So you'll have a C grade, and if you start doing better, you can upgrade that to a B, or if you start doing worse, D. And while it can be a little frustrating to watch your grade drop, I did like this feature. It gave me something to work on while I played the game, and it made me better at the game, which helped me beat it because this is a notoriously difficult Mega Man game. It's fun, it's super stylish, but it is not easy. That being said, the collection does have a casual mode, which is great for people who just want to play a Mega Man game and enjoy the story. There's also a save assist mode, which again, this is a Game Boy Advance game. It didn't have autosave, and I think that's what the collection incorporates. I haven't actually tried these modes out. I like the way they feel on the GBA, so I guess I'm being a little bit of an edgelord myself, but that's just how I know the games. And what's really fun is that once you eventually do beat it, you can start a new game plus, and now you've got all of your weapons as they were when you finished the game. So you've got all your upgrades and you can fly through the story. So at a time in my life where I just wanted Mega Man X on my Game Boy Advance, what I got was so much better. I got a sequel to the Mega Man X series where I'm playing just as Zero, and it's so much more than Mega Man X. It's not necessarily as legendary or better than Mega Man X, but I think it stands really well on its own as its own thing. And for that reason, Mega Man Zero really stuck with me all these years. It subverted a lot of what I came to expect from Mega Man X, as well as a Mega Man game in general, and it did a really nice job of telling me this story that I honestly wasn't expecting. When you start the game, you're shown Zero in this state, and you're asking, hey, why is Zero like that? What happened in between Mega Man X8 and now that left Zero in this condition? And also, we're going to fight X? Since when is X the villain? Like, that's such a different thing, and all of these questions are answered as the story goes on, but this is the stage that the game sets you up with, and it feels really cool the entire time. And given the fact that there's so many weapons and ways to play, you can actually craft your own fun as you play the game. Maybe you don't want to use the Z-Saber. Maybe you want to play with just the Buster. Or maybe you just got the shield and you're going to be a shield boomerang main. That's your call, and you're rewarded for that because the game lets you upgrade these things as you play. So it was a little difficult to recommend Mega Man Zero when this game was newer because there wasn't like a casual mode, and game difficulty is one of those things that some people just don't want to deal with difficulty in games, and I'm really happy that the collection has a casual mode. Granted, I think every difficult game is learnable, but I understand that some people just don't want to get frustrated. So if you want to play this and you want to enjoy the story, that option's there, and I'm really excited to tell you to just go get the collection and have fun with this game. And the collection itself also features two other games, which are called Mega Man ZX and ZX Advent, and those pick up from where Mega Man 04 left off. This whole series just has this different feel to it. And again, Inti Creates went on to make Azure Striker Gunvolt, and I think you can really see where they got a lot of their ideas from for that series from these games. Anyway, I could probably talk about Mega Man Zero and just gush about it for another 30 minutes, and we're going to cut that off right now. Thank you so much for listening to me talk to you about Mega Man Zero. I really do love this game. I hope you learned something about it. I know that I had a great time playing it again. I made sure to play it one more time before talking to you about it today. So any excuse to play Mega Man Zero again is one that I'm going to take. It has been my genuine pleasure to be on this episode of Side Quests. Thank you so much for having me. And as always, happy gaming.
Hello, wonderful listener. Pat Edwards here, co-host of the Let's Rewatch podcast on this very network. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an author and a game designer. Specifically, I work in the tabletop role-playing gaming industry. Well, I recently co-founded a production studio called Storyteller's Forge. Our first big book launch has arrived. The Black Ballad is a brutal and bloody TTRPG adventure that answers the question, what happens when the heroes die? Easily adaptable to multiple gaming systems, including 5th edition D&D, The Black Ballad is the perfect campaign to start after a total party kill. We are immensely proud of this epic tome and have assembled a stellar team of collaborators. The Black Ballad features a soundtrack by Diamorte, downloadable NPC audio snippets recorded by Carlos Ferro from Gears of War and Assassin's Creed, and some truly gorgeous illustrations spearheaded by our art director James Masingo from Borderlands 2 and Shadowrun. Our crowdfunding campaign goes live March 7th on BackerKit, and I would be grateful beyond measure if you would consider ordering a copy of The Black Ballad today.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.